What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Sean Davis. Make sure you guys hit the like button and subscribe here to the channel. We are here today grading every NBA team's offseason. I'm here with the guest that doesn't need any introduction, but we're going to do it anyway. My guy, Matt, you guys know him as 6Rings Make sure you guys follow all his tremendous content if you haven't already. Matt, my guy, glad to get you back here on the channel. And what's up? How you doing?
Good, man. How about yourself? Thank you for having me. I'm excited to do this. It's going to be cool because I haven't really done, like, I've talked about some teams' best off seasons, like the winners and losers. So it's going to be really cool to map these out in a tier list and kind of see where everybody stacks up against each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do, like Matt mentioned, we have a tier list, and we're going to be going through every team's offseason, grading them. So we have 5 tiers, kind of the S tier, best off seasons, A, really good off seasons, if you will, but maybe just like one thing that we would have liked to see them do. B off season, just solid off season. C and D, like underwhelming to like just flat out really bad off seasons. And we're going to start this off with the Houston Rockets that kind of like really didn't do much this offseason. Like they added Reed Shepard in the draft. They got AJ Griffin also in a draft day trade, but like you mentioned pre-record, like AJ Griffin might actually retire, which is crazy. But where are you at with the Rockets? Because I think they were pretty content with just kind of running this thing back and trusting on internal development.
For sure. I do agree there. Like, if they ended up making, I wonder if, like, how much we would have thought about this team as a legitimate contender in the West if they traded for a Mikal Bridges that I know was, like, in the rumors in the beginning of the offseason, or if Donovan Mitchell ended up actually being on the trade block. But I think for the Rockets, like, while they maybe had a quote-unquote disappointing offseason because they didn't do too much, I think, yeah, you're fine with that. You're fine with the internal development of Alperen Şengün and Jalen Green and them playing for rookie extension contracts this year. So I'm excited to see how they look. I love the draft pick of Reed at 3. And I just think another year with this continuity of this team with Ime Udoka, it's exciting. So, like, I guess it's like an interesting ranking because they didn't really do too much, but I think that's fine with the young team. So I don't know if you think that's more of like a C ranking, a B ranking, or do you think just since the minimum moves, it's a D? What do you think?
I'm thinking like C,
Okay.
honestly, like because it's more or less just because they didn't do much. Like the
Yeah.
Reed pick in general is awesome, but they just
Mhm.
really didn't do much. So I'm thinking more C, but
Okay.
maybe
Yeah.
we can always like adjust this as it goes
Yeah.
on.
That's fine with me. But I think, yeah, like if they're a team that make minimal moves for them, it's a little bit better than, like, I'm sure we'll get to teams that made minimal moves that are a lot older, and that could be a little bit scarier. So I guess we can kind of figure
Yeah.
that out.
Yeah, we can definitely adjust this as it goes. Miami, a team that is I have a like tough time talking about Miami in general because I don't really know like what to do with them. But they bring in Khalil Ware this offseason in the draft. We pull up their kind of their team here really, really fast. The Heat are another team, honestly. I think the Heat are kind of the opposite of the Rockets, where theirs is more so like, can we just get healthy
Mhm.
and like can Jimmy play a full season and be like locked in from start to end? Matt, where are you at with the Heat?
Yeah, I'm getting nervous about this team. I'm a little scared if this season doesn't go all that well. This could be Jimmy's last year in Miami. I do wonder how much. I know, like Pat Riley said, their biggest offseason acquisition was actually in the midseason last year with Rozier. And while I do think if they stay healthy, like, I'm still okay taking Miami against a bunch of teams in the playoffs in the East. I would have liked a little bit more though for them, especially in regards to their depth. I wonder how much of an impact Khalil Ware will have as a backup in his rookie year, and then losing Caleb Martin to the Sixers in the conference, I think, is going to hurt a decent amount as well. I'm a little nervous about the Heat, but they're still a team that I'm going to give the respect to. If they're fully healthy as a 7th or 8th seed, I think they could still win a playoff series, but it's a big if they could stay healthy. So I think I'm okay with them being like in D or C. I just don't think what the moves they made this offseason when other teams got better around them would warrant B or better.
Yeah. We can maybe go like back end C, and then like
Okay.
be another situation where if we want to adjust and maybe slide them down to D, we can do that. But
Let's go, man.
again, there are another situations like, okay, we are banking on, I guess, health
Yeah.
and Jimmy kind of being back to form. Charlotte Hornets. So the Charlotte's off season, another fairly quiet one. Their biggest acquisition is them hiring Charles Lee. For being completely honest, that's their biggest move. Bringing in Charles Lee. They drafted on Saloon with the 6th pick in the draft. I kind of thought that was a reach, but that's just me. And they're also a team that's kind of banking on internal development. Where are you at? Is the Charles Lee signing enough for you to like put them even in B tier. Where are you at?
Yeah, I think that's, like you said, it's their best move this offseason. I feel like it's a different environment in Charlotte, at least. I would have liked if they didn't commit all that money to Miles Bridges. I think that can dock them a little bit
That too.
here. Yeah, like
Yep.
70 plus million guaranteed for him. And I don't know, because I wonder how much of an impact Salon's going to make in his maybe first 2 years in this league. But I think they got Josh Green for basically free.
Yep.
And I like KJ Simpson, like Seth Curry coming back. This team, it should be exciting because hopefully LaMelo's healthy. I feel like offseason wise, it's got to feel a little bit better than the teams we've talked about because of Charles Lee. So I'm honestly fine with them in C, but I think I'm also fine with B too. I think I'm just going to throw two things I'm cool with, and you can make the final choice.
All right, so we'll go with B for now. The Josh Green deal, like you said, got him for scraps.
Yeah.
I am such a big fan of Charles Lee, so getting Josh Green for nothing and Charles Lee is enough for me to put them, even if it's at the back end of the B tier.
Go with me.
One team that I think we are both going to love their offseason is the Orlando Magic. You get Tristan da Silva in the draft. You know, just 6'9" wing that could shoot the shit out of the ball. And then in free agency, you get Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, one of the best, like, that's really early in free agency too. One of the better signings, like, flat out in free agency. What are your thoughts on the Magic? Where are we thinking here?
Yeah, I mean, it was an incredible offseason for them. I think at the end of the day, I'm going to be fine with the Franz extension. You mentioned Da Silva, I think was great value for them to win now. They brought back everybody pretty much.
Yeah.
Like, I guess Fultz is going to be on a different team next year, but they bring back Mo Wagner. They bring back Goga Bitadze, their big man depth.
Yep.
And I wonder how Jalen Suggs, I guess he's going to play point guard for them this season. I wonder how he's going to be as like initiator for that offense. But I think just landing KCP, it can't hurt you whatsoever. And they had to utilize that cap space somewhere. So they had one of the better off seasons, in my opinion. I'd be perfectly okay putting them in S tier. I don't know if you think that's a little too rich for them, though. Because I guess
we
for
could go S for.
I was gonna say, like, you don't
thinking?
have many teams in S. Like, if you're fine with that, then that's fine. If you think they're like a tier below, because I wonder. Because I'm trying to think, like, there's one team in my mind that had the best offseason, or I guess there's two teams. So I guess it just depends how many teams you want to have in S. If you don't want to like crowd that tier to devalue it.
We can start with A, and then again, like another situation, if we want to bump them up, that's perfectly fine. The Raptors here, they're next. Jacoby Walter, another team that really didn't have a lot going on. They do get Davion Mitchell. There we go. I almost said Jalen McDaniels. That was the guy they traded to get Davion Mitchell. I really like the Raptors draft night, even though I wasn't insanely high in Jacoby Walter. I loved them getting Jamal Shed, loved them getting Jonathan Mokbo, loved them getting Orich Chomsky with like one of the last picks in the draft, essentially. And then, like I said, the Davion Mitchell trade. Toronto's not a free agency like destination typically. So they're always kind of a team that's going to be fairly hard for them to make a lot of moves. But, you know, they extend Emmanuel quickly as well this summer. So where are we at with the Raptors? I kind of view them more as like a C tier offseason. Like, it's okay, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say C tier. I wasn't disappointed with the Raptors offseason because I wonder if they really had that much flexibility. Like, they lost out on their first round pick because of the Pirtle trade. So that was just a sunk cost at that point. And you paid a lot of money to Quickly and Barnes. I'm low on the Raptors this year as a team overall. And I think this offseason is going to be a reason why. They have a lot of fun young players, but I don't think, I would put them in C as well.
All right. Slot them right in between the Rockets and the Heat. The Clippers. This is not the updated logo, but I think the best thing that happened to the Clippers this summer is that they are out of crypto.com arena. They lose Paul George. They do keep Harden around. They replace Paul George essentially with Derrick Jones Jr. They lose Russell Westbrook. They bring in Chris Dunn. So there's a pretty active offseason. I think lower on the Clippers right now. I don't have them making the playoffs. So where are you at with the Clippers offseason? And, you know, did they do enough to kind of supplement the losses that they had this offseason?
Yeah, in a vacuum, like, I do like the pickups of Derrick Jones Jr. a ton and Chris Dunn. It's going to help out their defense. I like the extension of Vita Zubats, but I think just like losing Paul George for nothing. And I know there was going to be second apron issues. And I know that contract gets scary in the back half of it with his age. It's just like once he left, you pretty much I think they're out of any conversations on winning an NBA Finals with this core that they have at least next year. You gave up so much for Paul George that ultimately you ended up getting nothing for him this offseason, and he leaves 5 years later, and they had one conference finals appearance and no realistic shot at winning the finals that year because Kawhi was hurt. So I think the fact that all this came together and this kind of unraveled with the Paul George trade from 2019, I would put them in the D tier just because now we're looking at them as a completely different team going forward. Maybe last year you thought, okay, this team could maybe make a run, especially the stretch when they had after they got Harden and how good they looked in the West. But now it's like their best peak this year could be the 6th seed maybe if everything goes right. But I don't think this team makes it out of round 1 now. So I would put them at D. I don't know if that's being too harsh though.
Nope. Don't need to convince me any further. Yeah, again, I think I'm just naturally low on the Clippers. For people that keep it up with the power ranking series, we're not that far from the Clippers, not to put any spoilers out there. But yeah, I am just, I think, a little bit naturally lower on them. Next up, the Minnesota Timberwolves. I love teams like being aggressive on draft night to get guys that just make sense for them. And them getting Rob Dillingham, giving up a 2031 first round pick, if I recall correctly, in order to do that. You potentially have your lead guard of the future when like Conley kind of rides off into the sunset. How many guys would be better than mentor a guy like Rob than Mike Conley? Where are you at with this Timberwolves offseason?
Yeah, they weren't going to have like too much flexibility financially, and they're deciding to run it back with Cat and Gobert, which I think is fine. But like you said, like getting Rob Dillingham, they may never have a chance to get somebody of his caliber in the draft going forward because they plan on either not having their first round pick or picking very late in the draft. And I love them getting Terrence Shannon late in the first round as well. I think he can supplement the loss of Kyle Anderson, who they'll miss a little bit next year. But I'm excited to watch Terrence Shannon in this rotation. You're just going to have another year with Anthony Edwards kind of running this team. And hopefully he can take another step as just the number one for this team in this league. I liked it. I liked what they did on draft night. I think they had one of the better drafts, what they had going for them. They didn't have too much flexibility financially. I'm cool putting them in B tier maybe based off the draft or
that's where I'm at. Due to the like limited flexibility they did have, the moves they did still make, though, I think B is perfectly fine. Philly, all the cap space in the world, had a middle of the pack draft pick. They get Jared McCain. They signed Paul George, Kelly Oubre, 6th round. They had a lot of stuff that they could have done this summer. Is Paul George warrant enough to kind of put them in the A or S tier, in your opinion?
Yeah, for me, they were going to be one of my S tier teams. Now, do I think that they're a favorite in the East to win it all next year? No, I would still probably take maybe 2-ish teams over them, but they gave them a shot. They gave themselves the best trio they've had with now Joel Embiid, the player he is. And I think they did well with the limited financials after the George signing. I like the minimal pickup of Eric Gordon and Andre Drummond, and getting Caleb Martin I thought was massive. And I like them signing KJ Martin to a contract. I think he's making around $7-8 million, where they can now flip one of those picks that they have in the future, maybe from the Clippers. That's at the deadline. If they wanted to get somebody like a Dorian Finney-Smith, so they gave themselves flexibility for next year's trade deadline, which, yeah, I think this was the perfect offseason for the Sixers. I don't love the Paul George contract in 3 or 4 years from now, but I think for the next 2 years, this is a big three that has a chance of winning a title. And I think they elevated themselves into a new tier from this offseason, and it's a tier that they could win an NBA title. So I think that is an S tier for me.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Paul George, I mean, they have one of the best trios in the league. I love Nurse as a coach. McCain's awesome as a draft pick. I mean, this is an S tier offseason. Now we have the Atlanta Hawks, who had a very interesting offseason. So they take Zachary Reese-Shea with the first overall pick. And, I think depending on how high you are on Zachary Reese-Shea will kind of determine where you kind of feel at with this Hawks offseason. They also trade DeJounte Murray. They get Dyson Daniels, probably the most intriguing part of that trade. Larry Nance Jr. I think they also get one first down the road in that deal as well.
They get the Lakers first. Yeah, the Lakers one.
Yeah, that's just great.
Which for your sake, hopefully isn't too high next year.
Yeah. Where are you at with this Hawks team?
Yeah, it's a weird spot right now. I think they are one of the more interesting teams because they don't own their first round pick next year, so they don't want to be super bad. But I don't think that this team, I think everybody in some way, shape, or form is going to have like a clear 8 teams, like the same 8 teams in the East that if they're all healthy will make the playoffs. And I don't think the Hawks are one of them. So I think they're at best maybe the 9th seed playing tournament exit team or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I liked Reese Shea. I mean, I wouldn't have done it at 1. I guess I could see the vision long term for them. I like the DeJounte Murray trade. I think it was time to just cut bait on it. Like it clearly didn't work out, and they were able to get at least 2 future first round picks in return for him. They still have multiple guys they could move at the deadline. I don't think they made any poor trades, but I think this team's ceiling next year is lower than what we thought it could be going into the offseason. But they landed the number 1 overall pick in the draft, which is a plus. Nobody really thought that was going to happen on draft lottery night. So I don't want to be too harsh on the Hawks. I think I would actually put them in B. I think they at least are going into somewhat of a right direction. And I do like Dyson Daniels in the backcourt with Trae Young going forward.
Do you have Dyson? Do you think they start Dyson with Trae? Or do you think they start Bogey?
Yeah, I think they'll start Bogey initially, but I think at the end of the year, it'll be Dyson because I really liked his defensive progression last year. There's just got to have to be some offensive upside. And I think Trae can tap into it. And I also don't love Bogdan Bogdanovic at this point in his career with that volume. So I do think they start Bogey like day 1, but hopefully by game maybe 45, we see Dyson in the backcourt.
Yeah. Now we have the Portland Trailblazers. The Portland Trailblazers, I mean, I love their draft night to start. You get Donovan Clingan at 7, which I think signals that DeAndre is not going to be here for that much longer. Mm-hmm. And then they used up keeping the 14th pick. They used that to get Denny Abdia in a trade. Denny's on pound for pound one of the 5 best contracts in the league. Mm-hmm. He had a breakout year last season. He's on our top 25 list for players under the age of 25. He's that good in my opinion. They did not fire Chauncey Billups, so I might ding them a bit for that. But Portland, and they're also not a free agency spot either. But Portland, how we feeling?
Yeah, that's fair for sure. I wasn't the biggest fan of Billups and how he handled kind of Scoot's minutes last year. But this team, it's crazy. They have the 3rd fewest win projection next year. I think it's 22.5 or 21.5. And this is like the worst team going into a year I've ever seen. Like they have a lot of talent on this team, both young and old. And even if like they move Grant or not, like I'm surprised that this team is projected as low as wins, but someone's got to be there. I actually like their offseason. I like Clingan, where they got him in the draft. I like the pickup of Denny Avdia, and they got at least something for Malcolm Brogdon and one of those future picks they got in the Dame trade. And I'd rather have Denny than Bub Carrington going forward if you're looking at it that way. So sure. Yeah, I don't mind the Blazers offseason. I would have liked maybe if they explored the Anthony Simons trade market. I wonder what his ceiling is on this team. And obviously there's a lot of crowded positions, but I liked it. I think I would probably put them similar to like Atlanta. But okay. They are in a weird direction. Like, would you say like, I don't know, the next 5 years, would you feel more comfortable like in 5 years from now that Portland has a better like core and stability than Atlanta, or do you like Atlanta's future over them?
Does Scoot Henderson like turning around in the next 2 years?
Yeah, like you're gonna hope so, right? Like he was drafted like with so much potential, and I think he's gonna be good this year because he had a very strong end to the year last year, and hopefully there's just some more like chemistry with that team going forward. But they're definitely interesting to look at like roster construction wise and like where they are with their veterans and core.
So they're like you said, very crowded roster. Mm-hmm. If you could guarantee me, like I think like you just did, like Scoot is able to turn it around and be an all-star-ish caliber player, or maybe even better, right? That I would say I would prefer Portland's core. Okay. But I would say still though, like the core of, if you look at Atlanta's core, let's say it's Trae, Jalen Johnson, Reese Shea, because he was the first overall pick, and Okongwu.
Yeah.
Is like their core-ish guys. Like that's tough. So that's why you would have to guarantee me that Scoot turns into like a guy.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm thinking for Portland now, I'm thinking like top of B personally.
Yeah, it's good. I think Clingan's like great value for where they got him to, and that's an exciting front court potentially going forward.
Yeah. Boston essentially said, hey, we are going to extend everybody this offseason.
Yeah, which I guess is good, right? Like you don't want to risk any of that at all. And they got Baylor Shireman, which I thought was great, and picked up Lonnie Walker recently. For what they could do for a team that was that far over the cap, they did fine, I think.
C tier offseason. Yeah,
I think that's fair.
Nothing spectacular.
Yeah.
Now we have a kind of a fun team to talk about. We have, the San Antonio Spurs that this offseason, I think definitively like solidified that they are not they don't view themselves as a team that's ready right now. As much
Mhm.
as like I think they are going to get hyped because Wemby year 2, I think everybody is projecting Wemby to be a top 10 player by the end of this season. And I think I got criticized for having him too low. Like I gave him like an 88 overall in my rankings, which is like good for the 17th best player. And Sean, you're too low on Wemby. Like, how am I
Oh
low
my
on
God.
Wemby?
Dude, that's insane. I think I did 22 for me, and I'm like, wow, I'm really gonna put a year 2 guy at 22. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I was like, we all gotta like chill out with expectations in his rookie year. I don't think he's gonna hit them just because they were so high, and he hit them. So like,
yeah.
he's got insanely high expectations for year number 2, and I say I don't know if he's gonna hit them, and watch him just hit them, which would be nuts. But I don't
Yeah.
know. This seems like I love Chris Paul, and I'm sure you do as well for this team. Like they're gonna be a lot of fun next year
Mhm.
with him, and then maybe they move him at the deadline. We'll see. Stephon Castle was great for them. I kind of wish they kept the 8th pick maybe.
I
And I
do
don't
too.
love, yeah, and I don't love Harrison Barnes like on this team and eating into minutes of some of the younger wings, like if it's Malachi Branham's minutes or if they try to do anything with Blake Wesley still. So I actually didn't love this Spurs offseason as a whole, but I think it's fine because you're just still looking for that internal progression.
So are we thinking like top of C, low B?
Yeah, either one of those is good with me. I guess I would probably put them low B just because they at least went to like they upgraded the roster like objectively. But
Yeah,
yeah, it was but like I guess everyone was like saying like, okay, this is the time like you can really maybe go after a Lowry market and you can build around Wemby, but you really don't need to
sure.
do that. But maybe we just had higher expectations for them this offseason, but they're on a great track going forward.
What do they do with Keldon Johnson, do you think?
Yeah, I wonder if they're regretting maybe that extension, and I'm sure they're regretting the Zach Collins extension. I think he's going to be like I always thought I kind of liked him a little bit more than Vassell after Vassell's rookie year because what was Vassell was 20, Keldon Johnson was 19. But
Mhm.
man, I just thought like there was a lot of defensive like kind of I think mishaps last year. At least that I was like going through like a lot of Spurs accounts that like dig deep into his like defensive film and his progression. There was a little bit disappointments on that end, and I know Pop like would refuse to play him sometimes because of that. I don't know. If unless he turns the 3-point shot around and maybe the ball handling, I wonder what his fit is on the team because I wonder if there's going to be enough volume and usage for him to really keep that linear progression that we thought was going to happen. But now, after they're adding bigger names and highly touted prospects, he's just getting bumped down in the pecking order.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Now we have the Milwaukee Bucks first offseason with Doc Rivers fully involved and not being a consultant, so he can just get rid of Adrian Griffin. Low key, and I've like had this kind of internal discussion with the Bucks.
Mhm.
Giannis has like sneaky injury concerns now that don't get talked about a ton.
Yeah.
Um, it- they do add. I mean, Damian Lillard now for a couple years running has had some injury stuff, particularly like the hamstrings and stuff. They add AJ Johnson. I freaking hated that pick in the draft
Me
personally
too. Yeah.
for a team that desperately needs like playable depth day one. The Bucks for at least the last 3 seasons have kind of botched the draft. I mean, Andre Jackson Jr. is a fun piece, but he never really got real opportunities last season.
Yeah.
Um, they have AJ Green, who's I mean, he's already been there, but Torian Prince, Gary Trent Jr., probably the biggest acquisitions. I like them getting Tyler Smith in the draft. So
Me too.
I don't know. Bucks is a weird team to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, we're gonna hold the Bucks to I think a higher standard because they won the finals in 21. They had arguably the greatest trade asset piece in the league and Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? Like he's somebody that every team would trade their best player for at the time. And they had a round 2 exit against Boston the year later. They had a disappointing first round exit against Miami, and then another disappointing first round exit against Indiana. To what you alluded to, like Giannis having injury concerns, and this team like we talked about how much better Philadelphia got, Orlando got better. We could say the Knicks made some good moves. The Celtics we already talked about, and then you have Indiana and Cleveland. I feel like a lot of teams around them are getting better. And while a team that didn't have a lot of cap space to use, getting Torian Prince, Gary Trent Jr., and DeLon Wright with your veteran minimums are great. But Giannis is going to have another year of like wear and tear on him. Middleton, Dame, another year older. Brooke Lopez, another year older. There's a lot of question marks with this team. I don't know what major move they could have done. So I'm not going to say it's like it's easier said than done. So for them, I would go maybe just ahead of Boston. I don't know if you think they're good enough for B tier, but I like you said too, I didn't love the AJ Johnson pick. They've had a horrible track record developing guys. I can't tell you the last guy they fully developed internally. I like I'm gonna just try to go off the top of my head. Like I guess Middleton, but like they traded for him, but I don't know. Like it's been so long.
I'm like, AJ Green's turned out to be like okay,
I
but
guess, yeah, right, yeah. Because I don't know. Like, I feel like Marjan Beauchamp and Andre Jackson had real potential, and they both took massive steps back last year under Griffin and Doc Rivers. I mean, it was a mess with him trying to develop that core. So I just don't have a lot of faith in it. So I'm good with C tier.
yeah. Next up, we have my Los Angeles Lakers. Very, very frustrating offseason.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing they did, honestly, is the Don't Connect, draft selection, which, I mean, on one hand, I want to give them praise for it, but the other hand, I want to also say that the league just dropped on Connect in the Lakers' lap, who I had him 11th on my board. If you account for the injury stuff with Nikola Topic, he would have been 10th on my board. Then the next, biggest thing they did was JJ Redick, which is, yeah. And then Max Christie they extend, which is I like Max. So I mean, So I don't know. Unbiased perspective here. I'm going to turn it to you, Matt. Where are you at with the Lakers offseason?
Yeah, I think what I said about the Bucks, also kind of about the Lakers, we're going to hold them to a higher standard because we're counting down the days of LeBron. So it's a shame that, I mean, a lot of their notable signings the last couple of years haven't worked out. Some due to injury, like a Gabe Vincent last year or Jared Vanderbilt. These guys have been banged up, unfortunately. And I wonder what the Lakers really had to do. Did they want to meet the DeJounte Murray price out there? I'm not sure if that would have really put them over the hump because they're in a good conference and teams around them got better. And the Lakers, I don't really think got better too much. And I mean, I like the Dalton Connect pick as well. I don't know. This team is interesting. I think it's big for them that D'Lo opted in. I wonder if he would have actually left. I don't know if teams really were going to line up to pay D'Lo guaranteed money for 4 years, but that gives them at least a trade piece at the deadline if they need that. I would put the Lakers in C. I think it's a similar vibe to Milwaukee this offseason, but it's a little bit scarier for them because their star player is going to be 40 rather than Giannis, who's going to be 30. So I'd probably put them in C tier.
Like,
would you have kind of said that? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking like maybe right around the Rockets. Yeah. My thing with the Lakers offseason is like every single player continues to preach like continuity or whatever. And one of the takes I've had is continuity is awesome until it's not. And I think that the Lakers core 7 has, for the most part, shown you that okay, this is a good regular season group. And sure, if they're all healthy, you can bank on, healthy and competent coaching, I suppose. You can bank on them being a 48-ish win team. That's good for being the 5th seed, I guess, maybe in the playoffs. But when 3 of your core 7 or 8 guys consistently prove that they aren't really playoff fits for you, then again, continuity is cool until it isn't anymore. And I'm kind of cool on this core. I mean, outside of Bron, AD, and maybe Austin, the other guys, I would have liked to see them be a little more aggressive on the trade front this offseason.
That's fair. I think Reeves is going to be the big X factor. Can he go back to what he was that we saw flash in the pan against the Nuggets in the playoffs in 23? Can we get that version of Austin Reeves this year? Because I think last year was a little bit disappointing, but it's going to be tough. And I hope they're able to be competitive because the league is fun when the Lakers are. But the West is just getting so much better, and all the teams around them in the West at the top have these young stars that are under 30 years old that aren't going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah. Next up, the Brooklyn Nets. The best thing they did was finally said, we are going to be god awful and we are going to go get Cooper Flag.
Honestly, dude, I don't know if this is crazy, but I think they'd be beginning of B, end of A. If they
I'm with you.
Okay, cool. Because if they kept Bridges and they maybe just made moves on the horizon, or God forbid they went out and they got a Zach LaVine, I would probably put them in D tier. But I think they're finally going in the right direction. They're going to be probably the worst team in the league this year. And I think this was the right decision. Thank God they're able to get their first round picks back. They're probably going to get more for what they'd be as a seller at the deadline. It's going to be a seller's market. And I like the direction the Nets are heading. It's going to be some gross basketball in January, February, March, and April. But hopefully this is the step in the right direction and they can get some moderate luck next year.
The Nets might be the only team in the league that I'm going to actively refuse watching. I will not watch a Nets game.
The lineups are going to get gross. I love me some Jalen Wilson, but I don't know how I could see if he's one of their top scoring options. If there's a Cam Thomas injury, how is this team going to look offensively? It may actually be one of the worst offensive teams of this century if Cam Thomas gets hurt.
I like the Jorge Fernandez hire as well. I'm going to go back tier of A. And this is, I don't think I don't think there's a lot of examples of like win-win deals. I truly believe that Nets-Knicks deal is a pretty win-win deal. The Knicks get Mikal Bridges, who's now at best their second option, at absolute best, but like on some occasions he might be their third or fourth option, which is the best case scenario for Mikal, I think.
Yeah.
You can kind of focus him back on the defensive end as well. We'll talk about the Knicks in a sec, but that was a win-win deal. The Nets finally just tear it down. Let's be god awful. Let's go get a generational prospect in Cooper Flagg, and
For sure.
let's start from there. The Phoenix Suns. I'm not going to lie. I like the Suns. I have a better feeling about the Suns heading into this season than I did in the last season. I hated the Suns heading into last season, but I actually like the Suns a little bit more heading into next season than as opposed to last. Do you kind of feel the same way?
Yeah, for sure. I like their draft picks. I mean, they prioritize defense in Iguodala and Dunn, which I loved. Like the fact that you get Tyus Jones for the minimum is phenomenal. Same with Monty Morris.
Insane value,
right? Like it's great. Even though he's not going to help out their defense, it's still like a $15 million a year player they got for $1 million or $2 million a year. I wonder the biggest question mark I have about this team is the big man depth and how Yusuf Nurkic is going to be this year, as his career has been kind of going the opposite way you'd want. And he is by far their best big man on paper, which is kind of scary in the West where there's a lot of good bigs. But I think all things considered, they had no cap space. I didn't love the O'Neal like value too much for $11 million a year for 4 years, but they couldn't really do much else than that. I honestly think all things considered, I'd probably put them at the end of B.
Yeah. Thoughts on a Bud hiring as well?
Yeah. I should have obviously mentioned that. It's interesting because I don't know. I thought Vogel was a good hire, and obviously it seemed like he lost the locker room like halfway through the year. And I want to say that Bud is going to be different, but what we've seen around Kevin Durant for the last couple of years, I don't know if any head coach is safe. And I hope Bud is that guy because I think Bud, he got the short end of the stick towards his Milwaukee days because I thought he was fine as a head coach. And then they kind of put that 21 season that if we don't win it all, you're going to get fired. And they actually won it all. So it extended that life a little bit for him there. But I think he deserves to be a head coach in this league. I don't know if he's that much better. I'll ask you, like, do you think he's going to be that much better of a head coach than Frank Vogel? Like, do you think it'll be night and day, or do you think it's like marginally better, or do you think it won't make too much of a difference at the end of the day?
I think he'll be marginally better.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
But like, it's not like you hired a top 5 or even a top 8 coach. Mm-hmm. Like Vogel and Bud are probably around the same. I guess I probably trust Bud to now lose that locker room a little bit more, but I don't know. We'll see. I do like the Suns heading into this season though.
Yeah, me too.
The Pelicans get DeJounte Murray. But there's still a lot of uncertainty. Like, what do you do with Brandon Ingram? They draft Yves Missi. I know the Pelicans are really, really frustrated that they were able to snag Kel'el Ware as that big I honestly was thinking they'd go Deron Holmes even because Yves Missi is fine, but I would have went Deron Holmes. At least give me like somebody that could play consistently next to Zion and our floor spacing not be crushed. And I think Deron Holmes would have been more ready day one. I don't know. Where are you at this Pelicans offseason? They do get DeJounte Murray, though.
Yeah, dude, it's weird. I was trying to figure out what the starting lineup's going to look next year because you're obviously locking in Ingram and Zion for now. You're locking in DeJounte Murray. Who starts at the 2? Do they do CJ because he's making all that money and he's the veteran? Or do they do Herb Jones, who is one of the best defenders in the league? Like, I think to complement DeJounte, you should do Herb Jones. And then you have, on paper, while he might be, I think, a good player in his career, he's one of the worst starting centers in this league going into next year. So there's a lot of question marks. I would have felt a little bit better if I don't know if I love the Murray addition for them. I guess we got to figure out if Ingram's going to be on the team throughout the full year. And if not, who is trading for him? And could they somehow get a big man in return? I don't know. But this team, I don't know. I guess they got better, right? Because you had DeJounte Murray. You kept most of your core around. You add Yves Missi. You lose Jonas Valanciunas. It's going to hurt a little bit. You lose Larry Nance Jr. and Dyson Daniels. I'd probably put them in somewhere in B tier. Like, I think they made an effort this offseason. I don't love – it's a weird direction. I think they're in a better spot than like in Atlanta is, but it's just kind of hard to figure out their vibe going forward. And I guess we won't really know that until an Ingram extension is made or a trade is made regarding him.
So I think they're starting 5. I think right now, if I'm New Orleans, my best bet is to start Zion at the 5.
Yeah, I guess you opt for that. And what is he, 6'6"? It'll be interesting, but he's physical, so.
Yeah, so you go CJ, again, they're small, but CJ, DeJounte, Herb, BI, and then Zion. I agree.
It's
Their
interesting.
big depth is so bad because I just don't think he's ready to start day one.
It's tough. And what they
yeah.
signed Daniel Tice. I don't know. Maybe you just try Zion and hope that works.
Yeah. Like you said, they got better, which is what makes this kind of weird and complicated. But I mean, I don't know. Like they got better, so do you put them like top of C?
I think so. I'm cool with that because I think their range really hasn't changed much from last year in the West. Like,
Sure.
Do you think they put themselves in a new tier in the West? I don't think they're in tier 1. Do you think they're a tier 2 West team? If you say it's like your Memphis, your Lakers, your Suns, like they're probably in that tier, right? Or outside it?
Either right outside it or like I like LA and the Suns if every team's healthy better than New Orleans.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. With
Definitely.
Pelicans. The Detroit Pistons. I actually like the Pistons offseason. You get 3 guys in free agency. The Tobias contract is what it is, and they kind of need to spend money somewhere, I suppose. They also bring in Malik Beasley. They trade for Tim Hardaway Jr. And then they obviously draft Ron Holland, my guy, on draft night, which actually surprised me. I did not think they were drafting Ron Holland.
No.
It's weird though. Like all their draft picks, they draft guys that I love, but none of those guys fit next to each other.
I know there's going to be some floor spacing issues for sure with like a Sor and Ron out of the gate, but they got like new coach and JB Bickerstaff. So, I mean, he had a
hire.
Yeah, it's fine because obviously it didn't end well in Cleveland. But you know what? They made an effort to get better, and they definitely did. I think I was gonna say B as well. Like I'm still excited because like I like Jalen Duren, I like Jaden Ivey coming out of Purdue. Obviously, love Cade. They're going to be more competitive this year, I think. And hey, maybe there's a scenario where they're like the 10th seed in the East and they play playing tournament basketball.
Hey, I had the Pistons ranked for like it was a point where I got to like number 28 and started putting polls out like, hey, who should be here? And every time the Pistons won those polls,
Really?
Like, guys, the Pistons are going to be a better basketball team.
Yeah, like if you had to rank, I don't know, because I'm sure you ranked all these teams yet. But what's your view on Detroit, Charlotte, and Toronto in the East next year? If you had to rank those 3,
Charlotte. If every team's healthy, Charlotte, Detroit, Toronto.
Okay, yeah, I would probably say Toronto 3rd because they're like 1 injury away from I think having a really bad year.
God forbid Scotty gets hurt. Like that team is awful.
Yeah, they don't have the depth. At least I think Detroit and Charlotte have they have better depth than Toronto to withstand that for sure.
Next up, the Washington Wizards, kind of entering year 2 of this rebuilding phase. Bilal's still here, obviously. They were able to get Alex Sarr. I really like them getting Bub Carrington, a guy that I kind of like came around to later on in the draft process. I don't know if Bub Carrington is worth giving up Denny Avdia. And I guess like time will tell on that one. They keep Brian Keefe, who was the interim head coach after they let go of Wes Unseld Jr. Where are you at with the Wizards offseason? It's kind of like a fine offseason, I think.
Yeah, for the rebuilding team, like you got, I guess, tradable pieces still. They didn't move Kuzma. Valanciunas will be gone probably. Brogdon, you'd assume, would be gone as an expiring. I didn't really love the Denny move because I thought there was excitement about Denny and Sarr potentially playing together in the half court with Bilal. And I mean, they were never going to be able to move Poole. There's some question marks with this team. I think in its young core going forward, I would have liked if they maybe picked up. I guess they did pick up a future first round pick in the Denny trade. I was gonna say C. I think if we're talking about like some of the rebuilding teams, but I don't know. Like, were they that much different than Atlanta? Maybe not as much. Like, I think like Brooklyn went in the right direction. I don't think Washington needs to get any worse. Like, they were not good last year. So I'd probably put them like end of B, beginning of C. But I like them getting Sarr too. I'm still a big Sarr guy.
We go NFC for now, like right behind Phoenix, I think.
Okay. Yeah, that's good with me because I think this is what they got. Like, they have their core. And this team's going to look very different after the deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, we have the Denver Nuggets. A lot of the hype for me around Denver's offseason immediately like went away when DeRon Holmes tore his Achilles, which is unfortunate because I thought that move made a ton of sense. One of my favorite first round picks, actually, as much as I dislike Denver. They extend Jamal Murray, which I'm curious what your opinion is. My opinion on the Jamal Murray thing is, I think one, if they had did it last summer, the reaction would have been completely different coming off the finals run. And B, it could look nasty by the end of that extension, but like I don't think you can overthink it right now. I would rather look bad at the end than potentially nuke a core that still is like one of the favorites in the West, where I think they're hinging on. They do add Russell Westbrook, obviously, but like if two of Julian Strawther, Christian Brown, or Payne Watson kind of take that next step, this team is right back to being the second best team in the West, probably. So I don't know. Where are you at with the Nuggets?
Yeah, I think if we're looking at the offseason as a whole, it's weird because they're technically a finals contender next year. I mean, I think they got notably worse. I mean, losing KCP they're gonna miss that, and they're asking a lot out of Christian Brown and Julian Strawther, and I'm a big Strawther guy, and I think he can actually help that role a lot next to Jamal. There's a lot of question marks with this team. Like losing your first round pick when you need that big man depth is gonna hurt a ton. I don't know if Dario Saric is gonna be able to replace that void well, and Zeke Naji took a step back. I think what we thought he could be last year. They keep bringing back DeAndre Jordan. It seems like I think he came back, right? DeAndre Jordan. I'm gonna maybe just double check that. Yeah, he came back. Murray, the poor Olympic play. I think they'd be like, to be honest, I would go like N to C. I don't know. Like they're still a finals contender, so I don't want to say they had a D offseason, but I would say there was probably them and OKC maybe favorites. After losing to Minnesota and the moves they made this offseason, maybe you're leaning towards Minnesota. Maybe you're now leaning Dallas over Denver. And they're kind of becoming like that fourth team in that tier one in the West. So they're projected to lose 6 more games next year. I think they got worse this offseason.
Lakers or Nuggets offseason?
I think, oh man, I guess I would say like if you're looking at them individually, I think the Lakers had a better offseason just because they didn't lose as much. Like if you're like Delta Connect was out for the year and they lost who would be considered their 5th best player. Would it be Rui or would it be D'Lo? Like say that, and they didn't replace him with anything. Like that would be the Nuggets offseason, like theoretically.
Fair. Speaking of the Dallas Mavericks are the next team here. They get Klay Thompson. They also bring in Najee Marshall, which personally, that is the move I like more. Is my like kind of favorite Mavericks offseason addition. They replace Derrick Jones Jr. with Najee Marshall, which dare I say might be a bit of an upgrade marginally, but like could be that. My viewpoint on the Klay Thompson thing is if you are locking him in as a night in, night out starter, then I don't like it. But if you're more sort of locking him in as this 25-minute per night guy that, depending on the matchup will start, especially come playoff time, depending on the matchup will start, other nights will be just are scoring off the bench, then I like it a bit more. So I don't know. I'm in the middle, I guess, on the Klay signing. But Najee Marshall did some other stuff. Where are you at with this Mavs offseason? They also add Quentin Grimes too.
Yeah, for Tim Hardaway Jr. in a couple seconds, which I thought was an amazing pickup for them. Yeah, like it's gonna hurt a little bit losing Josh Green and Derrick Jones Jr. for what that team was last year, but I think they've replaced them very well. Like you said, Najee Marshall, I think could be just as good in that role. And I think a little bit more consistent of a shooter than Derrick Jones Jr. You're probably going to go a little bit down in athleticism and defense, but not by much on the defensive end. And then getting Quentin Grimes is going to be such a big pickup. Grimes was so good in the big moments for the Knicks in that 23 season, late in the regular season and against Cleveland in round number 1. And he's going to be great defensively for a team that lacks some defense in the backcourt. And I think we saw that in the playoffs. The thing with Dallas, I think that was their downfall, was when Kyrie and Luka aren't going, who could step up? I don't know if that's going to be Klay Thompson, but at least I think it gives them a shot next year. And I like the moves that Dallas made this offseason. I think they're going to still be a finals contender. Would they be the favorites on paper? No, but I would say they had a B offseason, in my opinion.
I'm thinking like top of B.
Yeah, that's good with me. Because I mean, like, I don't think they dropped a tier. They're right there, and they built, I think, well around Kyrie and Luka.
All right. We got the Indiana Pacers, who also kind of just said, hey, we're going to run this thing back. And I think the Pacers are actually going to get slept on because of a couple of different reasons. One, they didn't make this big move. 2, their playoff series wins were, unfortunately, like, they did get some nice injury luck. Like the Knicks, everybody seemingly got hurt in that series. And then the Bucks, Giannis might have played in one game, I think, and then like immediately went right back.
Did he play? No, I don't think he played at all. Dame, I
Okay, so
think,
Giannis didn't
played
play
one
at
or
all.
two.
Yep, Dame played two, but
Yeah.
then in the middle of that second game, he got hurt. So
Yeah.
they extended Siakam, obviously. They extended Obi Toppin. They extended, like, they essentially really just said, hey, look, we're going to make sure everybody is able to stick around here. Brought Andrew Nembhard back as well. TJ McConnell. I think this is like, I mean, they didn't add much. I love the Johnny Furphy pick. I will say that. I think this is a B tier offseason, and maybe I'm just high on the Pacers.
Yeah, I think it's a B tier. Like, you brought back the team that went to the conference finals. A lot of their young guys are going to continue to get better, and you're going to have another year of chemistry with Siakam and Halliburton. The only thing I dislike, just because I want to see Jarris Walker play more, is re-signing Obi Toppin. Maybe it's going
Yeah.
to kind of block him a little bit, but I agree with B.
All right, we got the Golden State Warriors, who is a pretty weird team to talk about because I think they got better.
I do too.
I think that compared to last season, but I don't think it's going to be enough in a loaded West. They bring in DeAnthony Melton, Buddy Hield, Kyle Anderson. They still have, some bits and pieces of that remaining on core, Jonathan Kuminga, Brand Pajemski. They do lose Klay Thompson, but I can't wait till I get to the Warriors episode in my power rankings. I can't stand the fact that the Warriors did not just go balls to the wall and get Lauri Markkanen. The perfect fit. There wouldn't be more of a perfect fit in the league than Lauri Markkanen in this system in Golden State. And for that reason, I personally knock him a bit more. Where are you at? Because that decision still baffles me.
Me too. If there was an opportunity to keep, let's say, Trey Jackson Davis and Brandon Pojemski, which I think would be the goal, to bring in Lowry to keep those guys, I would be all for moving Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga and 1 or 2 firsts in that deal. Now, I think it came down to Utah really wanted Pojemski, and I get why, because I think he's someone that can complement anybody in this league. And I wouldn't be surprised if he had a better year next year than Klay Thompson in their individual roles. I think the Warriors on paper did get better. But we can honestly take into account them fumbling the opportunity of getting Lowry Markkanen, who would have been, like you said, I think the perfect guy in this system for sure, playing next to Draymond and Trey Jackson Davis and Curry, obviously. But I mean, yeah, like, I think Buddy Hield and DeAnthony Melton, like, they've replaced Klay in the aggregate, and I think they're going to be fine there. I think this is one of their deeper rosters probably since 2022, and they won it all that year. I mean, the West has gotten so much better since then, so I don't think that they're a finals contender by any means, but I do think they can make the playoffs next year. I'd probably put them like end of B, maybe middle of. What would you say? I would put them in B because I do think at least they got better. But obviously, if they got Lowry Markkanen, that would have probably went into A tier.
Yeah, I'm thinking like right around San Antonio and Phoenix. Like,
Let's go
you
with
need to
me.
slot them
Yeah,
right there.
because
Uh,
I mean, I just wonder what their ceiling could be next year. It's not going to be winning the finals, but they could win a playoff series if Curry just goes nuclear and the pieces around him are right.
Yeah. Next up, we got the Utah Jazz, and this is gonna be the first team that I'm like outwardly gonna say I think this is a C off season. They do extend Lowry, which awesome, good for them. They get Isaiah Collier and Cody Williams, which I don't think a team in the draft had a better like combination of draft picks than the Utah Jazz did. I had a lottery grade on Isaiah Collier. You get him at 29, or no, was it 27? 1 to 2. And then you get Cody Williams at 10. Great value in my opinion. But, and I discussed this like when I broke down the Jazz, I don't know where the Jazz are going like direction wise. Because Lowry's great, but I think if you had to find the guy that is the poster child of number 2 options in a best case scenario, I think Lauri Markkanen is that. So with the lack of like a real number 1 guy going forward, I don't know what the direction is. And they did pay Lowry, rightfully so, but I don't know. I just have a weird feeling about the Jazz. Where are you at?
Yeah, I think I'd put them like in C tier also. They're a team that I think needs to not bottom out for once, but I think they could benefit, landing into that Cooper Flag sweepstakes next year. And I want to see more out of their 2023 draft picks, and I like their 2024 draft, as you said you did as well. But I wonder also who's on this team after the deadline. There was the Walker Kessler rumors in the offseason. They didn't move a Clarkson or Sexton, and I think Sexton will have a ton of value if they do decide to move him at the deadline. So I'm intrigued to see what they look like. But I think I just want to see what the 23 and 24 draft picks look like this year. So I'm good with C tier as well.
All right, closing stretch. We have 5 teams, or 6 teams ranked, excuse me. Cleveland Cavaliers, they fire JB Bickerstaff, bring in Kenny Atkinson. They finally get the Donovan Mitchell thing done. They extend almost everybody, and they kind of run this team back. They call Darius Garland's bluff. I mean, my thing is, like, why are we trying to call Darius Garland's bluff? Or again, I just don't think it's gonna work. And I would have found some way to trade Darius Garland this summer. They bring in Jalen Tyson in the draft, which is fine, like fun addition. I don't know what they're doing with Isaac Okoro at this point either. He's just kind of sitting there, and it's
Yeah.
September 12th at the time of this recording. So I don't know. Where are you at with the Cavs? I'm not a fan of their offseason.
Yeah, I'd assume Okoro comes back. I mean, they're hopefully relying on just another year of this core to do something in the East, and they've been kind of disappointing. I mean, last year they were banged up, so you can't say that they wouldn't have beat Boston, even though I don't think they would have if they were fully healthy. I do like Tyson at 20. I would have liked if they maybe somehow picked up like a Cam Johnson or Dorian Finney-Smith in the offseason, which could definitely still happen. I'd probably throw them in C tier. I do want to ask you, I guess I asked you to rank those teams before. What is your opinion on Indiana, Cleveland, and Orlando next year between those three? Because I think all three of them would be disappointed with the first round exit, but I think they also probably have expectations going into the playoffs, maybe conference finals, or like not bust, or it's a disappointing year for some of them.
I'll go based off like who I trust, because like the rankings would be a little bit different. But who I trust more, I think Indiana's the best team out of those three.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm more projecting with this one. I would probably go Orlando second, and I think that's more projecting. But I just am not confident in the Cavs. I think it's going to come to a point, hopefully for their sake, before February, where it's abundantly obvious that Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell does not work. Can we make Evan Mobley a long-term 5 and get not do this thing with him and Jared Allen and go back to the 80s with our spacing? I just don't like how this team's constructed. And I guess it's like better to be where they are now than what they have been accustomed to in their post-Braun years.
Yeah.
But I just think this is very clearly going to end poorly for them. And why prolong it is kind of my point.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because Jared Allen is so good. But if you're really all in on Mobley, you got to move him to the 5.
Yeah. So I think it's pretty not D, my bad. I think it's very clearly better than Miami's offseason still. I think it's probably better than Toronto.
I would say I think it's still better than Denver's, because I don't think they got worse this offseason.
I think it's better than the Lakers then too, probably.
Okay. Then I'd put them right there. That's fine.
Right there. Okay. The Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, this would be for me S tier.
This is one of my S tier teams. Just like you're running the same 1 seed back basically, and you added Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein. It's unreal. And Nikola Topic. They're going to be the favorites to win the West.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Thunder fans, I guess, because there's just like a lack of analysis there. But truthfully,
I'm sure they're cool with it, honestly, just because. Oh my God, man! It was almost a perfect offseason. It pretty much was for them.
Yeah. They're my finals pick right now to win it.
Don't blame me whatsoever. Do you have them Boston as well? Is that your team?
It's either them in Boston, or, and I'm not doing this because you're here, them and the Knicks, actually. Who is the next team?
Dude. I mean, like, there's a scenario where it can happen. They're going to have to figure out, I guess, we can talk about them now, because losing Hartenstein is going to be a massive blow. Underrated defender, phenomenal playmaker at the center position. But you added Mikal Bridges, who I don't think we have to have any question marks about the chemistry coming in, because Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo worked out great for the obvious reasons of Villanova. OG, hopefully, I mean, he needs to stay healthy. I think Randall can really thrive into like a hybrid 4-5 role. I think they should really experiment him, small ball 5. The Knicks' ceiling is winning the finals next year, but they back-to-back round 2 exits last year. You could say he's due to injury. They were very banged up. Yeah, I think the Knicks had I would say they had an 8 offseason, maybe. You could say, like it's not as good as Philadelphia and OKC, because you did lose Isaiah Hartenstein. I thought they had a fine draft for what they did. I like Kolek a ton in the second round. And giving up all those picks is fine if they make it to the NBA Finals, with something the Knicks haven't had in 20 years and something they haven't won in 50 years. So they're going all in with this team. I think it's got the talent to win it all. Are they better than Boston? No, but I think they're right behind them.
Yeah. For me with the Knicks, I think the Knicks are, in my opinion, the clear-cut second best team in the East. Now there's maybe a couple other teams, like if Milwaukee's healthy, you could throw them in that kind of same tier. For sure. Philly is also right around kind of that range. I probably trust the Knicks a little bit more, but they're in that range. And then I think Indiana with some more like internal development and Howley staying healthy for a full season, like he was, I think, one of the 3 best point guards before he got healthy. I mean, before he got injured, excuse me, which would have been like in season tournament. So, it's tough. But I think the Knicks right now are the second best team in the East. And if they can find another big somehow to like help, Mitchell Robinson also had his own fair share of injury concerns.
100%.
Julius Randle, fair share of injury concerns. So if they can get another big in this room that can actually play, then yeah, I think the Knicks, I would say, can make a run and come out of the East.
Yeah, they did a good job with staying under the second apron, so they can work into the buyout market. So I wonder if there'll be a good center on the buyout market, but at least they have that in their back pocket if needed.
Yeah. The Chicago Bulls, they didn't necessarily lose DeMar DeRozan for nothing. They do complete a sign and trade. They get Chris Duarte in here. I think the best thing they did was taking Miles Buzelis, which, I mean, I think we might have talked about this in our mock drafts on your channel and here, where one of the most annoying things throughout the draft process was everybody mocking them a guard. And we were both like, please, no.
Why did they need another one?
Don't need another guard. They do trade Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey as well. Where are we at with this Bulls offseason? I think, yeah, I don't know. They're weird.
Yeah, I actually like the Caruso for Giddey trade for them. I know people are like, how do you not get a first round pick? I'm actually excited to see like Giddey run this offense in Chicago. If Caruso and or DeRozan were on this team, I would put them behind the Clippers. And if they're just running that team back, they would be by far the worst offseason. But I think since they're at least embracing a younger team going forward, I like Jalen Smith. I would put them in C tier. I guess maybe put them around. I don't know where you think in C tier, but I like the direction. There's just a lot of like talent that isn't high end on this team. I think they're probably like going to be around the 11th seed next year, 12th seed in the East, which is fine. I would like them to bottom out a little bit more, but they could definitely be sellers at the deadline. I don't know where you think in C tier specifically, though.
I think like right around the Rockets, personally.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Because at least there's like exciting faces. It's not going to be the same team. I'm sure Bulls fans are not going to be thrilled about watching Vucevic next year or Levine, but hopefully they play well enough where you can eventually trade them.
Next up, Memphis Grizzlies. I mean, you never root for injuries, but them getting hurt last season, like one of the worst injury luck seasons in a long time. They kind of just, instead of, overpaying potentially to go get Klingon, which I would argue might be the better fit, they identified the fact, saying, look, we like both of these bigs a lot, so why overpay and, give up stuff where we know one of these bigs are going to be here for us at 9. So we'll kind of just sit here and chill. And they did it. They get Zach Edey. I think because Ja Morant was an idiot once, I think people forget that when Ja's healthy, we saw it for that 6-game sample or however long he was healthy. When Ja's healthy, he's one of the 20 best players in the league. I would say this is a B off season. They didn't do a lot, but they didn't have to. This team just needs to get healthy, and they're going to be one of the best teams in the West. That's what they've consistently showed us when they're healthy. So I think it's like a B off season right around Minnesota, actually.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine with me. This team, all they needed to do was run it back, get healthy, and they'll be in conversations, definitely winning a playoff series next year, and maybe 2. You never know.
All right, last team, Sacramento Kings. They add DeMar DeRozan, which I don't know. I'm just gonna kick it to you off the rip because I still kind of have no clue what to do with the Kings.
Yeah, I think they're in the Pelicans tier for me, that they have a lot of talent on paper, but it's just not enough to put them, I think, into tier 1 or high end tier 2. But I do think this offseason could have been a lot worse. Like Devin Carter could have not have been there at 13. They could have lost Malik Monk, who could have made money somewhere else, and he comes back. They bring in DeMar DeRozan, which I think will give them a great scoring option and maybe the number 1 scoring option in the fourth quarter for them. Would I have liked a little bit more big man depth? Yes. But I honestly, it's weird because I like the additions, but I don't think they're a top team in the West. I would actually put them in B tier for the Kings. I would say, yeah, I think they had a better offseason than like Atlanta. I do like that. And like Harrison Barnes isn't on this roster anymore, and you're replacing Barnes, while be it like a late first round pick, but Barnes for DeRozan. I think that's great. You brought back Monk and brought in Devin Carter, who could bring a winning mindset, and you hope Keegan Murray can just thrive in that role. Just another year of development. I like the Kings going forward. They do got to figure out the Fox extension because I believe he's a free agent. It's not next year, right? It might be in 2 years, but
27, I think.
It's 27. Yeah. So like I think this is a fun Kings team to watch. I mean, I hope they can make a run because I would love to see the Kings in the NBA Finals. But I think they got better.
Yeah, I think they got. I do think they got better. It's kind of just the conversation with like the Warriors, for example. Honestly, a lot of these middle of the pack West teams, like, yeah, you got better, but are you in that upper echelon of those Western Conference teams? And that's where it does get a little bit weird with the Kings. And yeah, I more and more I think about it, I kind of want to drop the Heat to that D tier. I think I'm looking at them, and I'm looking at the Clippers. I'm like, okay, the Heat didn't do much. The Khalil Ware thing is awesome. And actually, like, one of the biggest concerns with Khalil Ware, obviously, coming out was the motor and things like that. And him getting drafted by Miami of all teams immediately wiped all concern out of my mind, at least, with the motor. So I don't know. I'm thinking about dropping them unless you want to keep them here, like at the end of C.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine with me. I'm cool with dropping them. Just so they could be like kind of the Clippers of the West. And I'm sure we both probably say we'd like Miami to make a run more than the Clippers next year. But I think while the teams around them got better, they just kind of stayed the same. And Pat Riley didn't make any notable moves. So I'm definitely cool with that. Them in D tier.
Any like closing overall like thoughts when you look at this completed tier list here?
I think I'm just happy that like what the Nets did this offseason. I think I'm just happy that they finally decided to go in a different direction and move on from Mikal Bridges and are going into the rebuild. I'm really excited to see how OKC looks next year. Could they flirt with what they win last year, 57 games? I think they could win over 60 next year for sure, even in a loaded Western Conference. And I think there's a lot of teams that maybe didn't make like major moves. I mean, like for Atlanta, moving DeJounte Murray is a major move, but I think a lot of these teams are going into one direction or another that we're definitely going to figure out this year. Like we have a lot of teams in B and C tier that have to figure out what they are as a team going forward. And I'm excited to see how the NBA landscape looks over this year. I'm just excited to have basketball back and see some of the rookies we watched like all season last year in college or overseas and get to see them this year. So this was fun to do. And it's really cool to look at in all these teams in this landscape specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Matt, my man, thank you so much for tuning in with me. This is a ton of fun as always. Nope, that's not what we want. But yeah, I hope to have you back on at some point throughout the season and the offseason, maybe even for that next episode. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. This was super fun to do. And hope this is a better year for your Lakers than last year.
Well, thank you everybody for tuning into this episode. Till next time, we'll see you next time. Stay safe and peace out.